What's going on, y'all? I was reading something in First Samuel chapter 1, and I was reading how Hannah, which was one of the wives of Elkanah, how she was not able to have a baby. Right? She didn't have a child at the time. Right? Now Peninnah, now I may be pronouncing these names wrong, so forgive me for that. Which was the other wife of Elkanah, had children. Right? But the thing is, one thing I noticed though, and I noticed this in verse, let's say verse 4, on the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give the portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children. Now, I'm reading this from the NLT version. And though he loved Hannah, he would give only one choice portion because the Lord had given her no children. Now, mind you, I was reading another version in the New King James version. It was a double portion that Elkanah had received, well, that Hannah had received from Elkanah. But the thing is, if you notice in the next verse, Peninnah, which was the other wife, began to taunt Hannah, because she wasn't able to have a baby. And it's so crazy because it helps me to think about and remember. Although Peninnah was able to have a baby, here's the thing: it says that the Bible tells us that Hannah, that he loved Hannah. Elkanah loved Hannah so much, and although she wasn't able to have a baby at the time, he gave her a double portion. But the thing is that Hannah was so caught up and sad and allowed what the taunting that Peninnah did to get to her to a point where she found herself in tears. And once she received the food, she was not able to eat it because of how much and how bad Peninnah made her feel. One thing we must realize, we have to be careful with how we brag and how we boast. The Bible tells us that we're only supposed to boast about the Lord, boast about what He does for us, boast about who He is. When we find ourselves in a situation thinking that we're better than somebody else because of a situation that we're in, we find ourselves in trouble. And next thing you know, God will have to humble ourselves. He will have to humble us. But the point of me bringing this up is not only that, but also to help us to understand the importance of not allowing people to get you to a point where you walk in depression, where you feel less than, where you feel not worthy. Instead, go to God. And that's exactly what Hannah did. Hannah went to God in prayer. Hannah went to God in prayer. And although she wasn't able to receive that encouragement in verse 8 from um, Elkanah, she was able to receive from God. Now, mind you, she made a vow to God that she will give, if she was able to bear a son, that she will give it, that she will present him and give him to God as a sacrifice. And that's the thing. One thing I will say: be careful of the vows that you make, because God will take you up. He may take you up on that. Here's the thing: the point I want you to get from this is, don't allow the enemy, because people are going to come against you. People are going to mock you. We were never promised that we were going to have a stress-free life. Satan is going to use people to get to you. The question is, how are you going to respond when people comes against you? Are you going to respond by complaining? Are you going to respond by allowing you to walk in depression? Are you going to respond by continuously living in sin? Are you going to respond by doing evil for evil? Or are you going to respond with prayer? Going to God in prayer, allowing God to work in you, allowing God to work in your situation, giving your all to God. And when you go to God in prayer and allow Him to touch your heart and allow God to work in your situation, it helps you to understand that He's the one that you should trust. He's the one that is in control of everything. He is sovereign, and He knows what He's doing. knows what is best, why it is best, and when it is best. Do you trust him? Do you trust him enough to go to do you trust him enough to go to him and be real about what you're facing? Be honest about what you're facing, because God knows anyway. Allow God to work in your situation. Don't go to Facebook. Don't go to social media. Don't go to TikTok. Don't go to Instagram. Allow God to work in your situation. Because here's the thing. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Satan's going to use people to get to you, but let God work in it.